time. The passage of time. As time moves forward, things change. They grow. They get older. Forward. We all strive to move forward. Forward is the future. But before we can move forward, we must go back.
My name's Harvey Gilman, and this is the story of how my life changed in 2 years, how Paradise's development has been going, and something that might change the world. This is the story of Devlogs 6. It's been a while since I said that. Hey, it's been a while. 2 years to be exact. Well, I'm back. A lot has happened since the last devlog. For starters, I completely switched to UE5 from Unity and had to restart Paradise, which, while a little scary, the game is coming along great. In fact, it's in a lot better state than the Unity version. One of the main reasons I switched to UE5 was due to its revolutionary graphics that allow me to create assets for the game with much higher fidelity and much less work. I also wanted to switch because I was starting to have a lot of trouble with Unity. Mainly as the scope of the game grew, I just felt like I was being limited by the engine. Plus, I was starting to use more of Epic's other services, such as MetaHuman Creator and Megascans. I even started to learn UE5 on the side and created some test projects, and I was blown away by how much more solid it felt when compared to Unity. All of the plugins and systems in UE5 that I was using felt cohesive and well developed. While Unity felt very janky, random things would crash and plugins that I thought would help just ended up making the whole process slower. On top of that, the Unity project that housed Paradise just started getting slower. It ended up being so slow that whenever I tried to undo a change, the whole editor would freeze for nearly 12 minutes. I just got so frustrated with it and I didn't like where the game was going, so I made the switch, and man, was that a good idea. This is the new Paradise, and even though it's still far away from being done, the base systems are starting to be built out. The planet you now see is being generated completely randomly by voxels. Yes, the same thing that is used to generate landscapes in Minecraft is being used here. Of course, most of the help was done with Voxel Plugin Pro, but the actual code generating the planet is all custom. It still makes very little sense to me, but hey, for the time being, it works. I don't have the actual real-world scale of this planet, but trust me, it's massive. The coolest thing about it is that it's completely destructible. And if you carve enough out of the ground, you can even see the damage from space. Speaking of space, I'm proud to show you the all-new, still being developed, Geode Explorer. A brand new ship that's meant to test multi-crew functionality. For example, there being a pilot, engineer, turret operator, etc. However, I'm currently redoing the entire ship system, so it's mainly just for looks. And don't worry, the original Nexus G2 is also receiving a complete remaster, but I'll show you that later. Now I think it's time to show you the asset creation pipeline I used to bring my ideas to life. Here's some concept art I drew of a new elevator that will be used in Paradise. Pretty exciting, right? Well, honestly, I don't actually do 2D art too much. One, because I suck at it, and two, because I just like to freestyle in Blender until something. When I first open up Blender, I try to have a good idea of what I'm trying to create. Mainly, what it will be used for and in what environment. For example, if this elevator were to be used in a hotel or apartment block, I would make it have a full enclosed interior. However, because I'm modeling this to be used for cargo and industrial use, I'll keep the design more function over form, intentionally leaving it exposed as there would be no need to make it look pretty. As you can see, I start out modeling the base shape of the elevator, mainly trying to find a design that works and fits my needs. This is mainly done using a technique called Boolean modeling, where, when I have a rough shape in place, I use Booleans to cut into the model, further refining it and adding detail. If you don't know what a Boolean is, it's essentially a math function that can subtract one object's volume from another, cutting into the model. This can also create unions and intersects, which are also just math functions. I actually use a plugin for Blender that makes using booleans a lot easier. Link to that in the description. After the process is done, I make some final adjustments before adding the main detail pass, where I add bevels, more booleans, and just more detail in general. Now that the fun steps are done, it's time to move on to every 3D modeler's worst fear: optimizations and UV unwrapping. The first of which is when you realize that all the detail you made has horrible topology, and if you don't fix it, bad things happen. So now I'm using Blender's knife tool to reconnect vertices and make quads, and I'm merging unnecessary vertices to try to get the model to be as clean as possible. Also, if you're wondering why the whole model is red and shiny, it's just another material mode to help me see if there's any shading artifacts that I have to get rid of. So, after I finish that issue, it's on to UV unwrapping, which is a little more fun, at least for me, but still just as tedious. I add a UV checker to the material, which allows me to see which areas of the model need more detail, or less, or if there's any stretching or artifacts. This is a really important step because without proper UVs, texturing the model will be much more difficult, if not impossible, as there may be artifacts in the UVs that would cause the textures to come out unusable. When I get that done, I like to get all the objects organized and named, then export them as individual FBX files. Now I move on to texturing, which is a pretty fun creative process that with the right software, in this case Substance Painter, I can easily create realistic PBR textures and give these models some life. And when all of that is said and done, I just import some files into UE5, set up materials, and voila, a fully textured, game-ready asset that looks great. I'd like to take a moment to talk about my short film, Wonder. If you haven't seen it, which you should, it's a film I made during an 8-week live online course about the future of education and how software like Unreal could help with that. I'm super proud of it, and I've actually been in some talks with the amazing people over at CG Pro, the same host of the online course, in seeing how to develop the idea further. However, I don't really want to confirm anything yet, as we're just throwing around ideas. So, I think it's time to show you some more systems in Paradise. I'm trying to build a scalable ship system for handling ships in my game that includes full multiplayer support, like having each player be able to control parts of the ship at the same time, having ships be fully replicated, and having them handle and feel like real spaceships, or at least the impression of that. You won't actually need pilot training or anything. However, ships look, they look like this. One of the main issues I've been having is that the way you actually move the ship around depends on which way the player's camera is facing. However, the plugin I'm using to handle the player, which is called AF Core, doesn't let me lock the camera. So I'm trying to find the best solution to fix this, most likely switching what camera you see from and in turn control the ship from. For all the Unreal devs out there wondering why I don't just possess the ship, and if you don't know what possessing is, it's just switching what controller receives input. In this case, it's either the ship or the player. Like, if I were to click the W key, I only want the player or the ship to move forward, not both. So the reason why I don't possess the ship is because I want to focus on VR in first person, meaning that I still want a person in VR to interact with the environment, like ship controls, by using their hands. And so I need the player to send inputs to the ship. This whole system is a lot more confusing and complicated to implement, at least for someone like me who is still pretty inexperienced with coding in general, so it will take a while to get this ready, and it's all pretty technical and hard to explain, but technically ships are usable now. It's just pretty buggy and lacks features. Oh, and I already gave it away, but I'm trying to make this game fully VR compatible, as I want it to be the main way people play Paradise. However, I still want it to play on PC and have cross-compatibility with all systems, including multiplayer. That sounds like a pretty hard thing to accomplish, so that's where AF Core comes in. AF Core is just that, a base framework that includes systems for handling multiplayer, interactions, and tons more that's fully cross-compatible with VR and desktop. At the time, I thought that it would be a great starting point to build off. However, there is a problem I wasn't aware of, and it's a big problem. I chose the newest version of Unreal to work off of. At the time, this was UE 5.0, the initial release of the new engine. I chose it because there were systems like Nanite and Lumen that would allow me to have much more realistic graphics and would make developing the game a lot easier. However, I quickly realized that neither of these systems worked for VR. Nanite being the biggest issue, as it is literally the system for handling all models and allowing me to have them be much more detailed. Whenever I tried playing it in VR, all the Nanite models would flicker and sometimes even crash the game, and Lumen, the real-time global illumination system that would let me have stunning, realistic lighting, was disabled in VR, which ends up looking horrible, as I can't even bake the lighting due to the size of my game. So this leaves me two options: stay on 5.0 and lose Nanite and Lumen, or simply just upgrade to the new 5.1 or 5.2 versions, which added support. Obviously, I tried upgrading the project. However, this leads me to the next big issue. That being that AF Core hasn't been updated since its support for 5.0, and the devs haven't said when they will update it. This is bad because since Unreal was updated from 5.0 to 5.1, it was basically a new engine, as the entire way Unreal handles input changed. And the main thing AF Core does is handle input. And because the devs haven't updated yet, it still relies on the old input system, which is pretty broken if you try to use it in 5.1. In my testing, I did get it to run, but it was very unstable and buggy and would crash. So this leads me to another option: restart Paradise again, building my own framework, which would probably take months, or staying on 5.0. As the way I see it now, it would probably be best to just stay on 5.0 and miss out on those features, is what I would have said. As just a few days ago, the devs have confirmed that there is now a working build of AF Core for 5.2, and they will release it soon. So this means that when they release it, all I have to do is spend some time porting the custom systems from Paradise into the new version. What could go wrong? Let's see, what else to talk about? Oh yes, voxel planets. Remember back in Devlog 3 when I first introduced planets in the Unity version? Of course you don't, it was like 2 years ago. 3 now. Well, back then, all I was doing was teleporting the player to the planet's surface, which back then was just a big flat plane that served as the ground. Pretty hacky, right? Well, I'm pleased to announce that we really do have planets now. No tricks, real giant planets. As I said before, the way I accomplish this is voxels, using a great plugin called Voxel Plugin Pro. Creative name, right? It allows me to easily create a planet that has biomes, interesting terrain, eventually oceans and caves, and one that lets me spawn things such as trees, rocks, and all sorts of stuff. But wait a sec, I mentioned that this is the same way Minecraft handles voxels, and if that's the case, why doesn't it look all blocky? Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail as this video has gotten technical enough, but what you're looking at is still blocks. It's just they've been smoothed out using the marching cubes algorithm. In fact, this is a common technique found in other space games such as Astroneer and No Man's Sky. The reason I went for voxels and not some other type of system is because voxels are not only performant, but they allow me to, without almost any effort, add things like mining and allow the player to edit the surface of the planet, which I never thought I would be able to add, but pretty much is already implemented with voxels. Also, using voxels saves a ton of space. Instead of the game loading in some sort of massive model of a full-scale planet, which I wouldn't even know where to start with in terms of creating something like that, all the game has to do is run various math functions and systems that tell the voxels how to be generated and textured, which allow for much better detail and lets me easily change how the planet is generated. For example, I could easily add craters and make the planet more moon-like. In fact, I did, with the planet's moon, which you can also visit with the same detail the main planet has. This system, with the right optimization and performance in place, would probably allow me to generate an entire solar system, if not more. Now that I've explained most of the things I did in terms of Paradise, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Why did this take so damn long to make? Well, the short answer is, watch what happened to Harvey Gilman. But a better one would be, I didn't know how to talk about all this. Development and life in general was happening really quickly with me going into junior high, and instead of working on this devlog, I just kept working on Paradise. I started writing this many times before. In fact, believe it or not, but this is the 9th revision of this script. and there's so much more I would love to talk about. But I can't put it in because it's no longer relevant or it would make this video too long. One of the other issues was I had set out to make each devlog better than the last one, and when it came to this, nothing felt good enough. There's other versions of this video, some from even 2 years ago that I never uploaded, and now that my junior high is over and I'm about to go into high school, I want to take this whole YouTube thing more seriously, starting with finishing this video and getting it out. So a few weeks ago, I rewrote this video and somehow it's hopefully out. I still feel like this video could be so much better. I could go more in depth, have crazier locations, talk about more things, but for the sake of time and getting this out, I've learned and continue to learn that it can't be perfect. So I hope you enjoyed it. No one will believe it, but I want to try and upload devlogs once or twice a month, as well as a ton of other stuff. And there's still a lot more to talk about, but I think I'll leave it to the next video. And without further ado, my name's Harvey Gilman. I have a lot of editing to do, and you're